Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is September 8th, 2012. And this is the Facebook. And this is the KNKL Show, episode 50. Yes, that is right, ladies and gentlemen. We have made it to our next major milestone, the 50th episode of the KNKL Show. And I am very happy and excited because today we are going to be doing a tutorial on doing backgrounds. Well, not so much a tutorial, but like we're going to be checking out some of the work I've been doing for Riot and one of my own pieces. Basically discussing my thought process as I go into creating backgrounds, setting up values, keeping clear silhouettes on characters, and such things as that. And I have the garage door open today, so there's going to be plenty of natural light coming in, lighting my face, because this monitor is unfortunately burnt out and I need to get a new one. But before we get into all that, we are going to be taking a stroll down, that's right, lovely lane, ladies and gentlemen. So I'd like to thank each of you personally for submitting your awesome artwork. My little brother loves this video game, and I'm sure he will enjoy this drawing. Thank you for submitting that, Alicia. And we've got all these other awesome submissions. So thank you guys so much for contributing to the Facebook as always. For those of you who have not followed me on Twitter yet, please follow so I can bug you when I'm uploading new episodes. And I can also tell you when I'm favoriting funny videos on YouTube, apparently. I didn't know it did that all the time. I thought it was just like sometimes. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, if you want to see the kinds of videos I favorite on YouTube, then go ahead and follow me. Now, without further ado, we will move into the tutorial. Get that out of there. Let's get this up. Okay, so today we are going to be discussing many things, but mostly it's going to be backgrounds and just my overall thought process that goes into making backgrounds. Alrighty. Oh boy, and I did not boot up. I did not try to use the tablet before I opened Photoshop, so the stylus may be out of whack. We shall see. So I'm going to move myself over here for today. Today I will be over here because we actually are going to be using this little window up here. That little friendly window up there is going to be our best friend today, and I will tell you why in just a moment. But first, let us see if I messed everything up. And I am not able to paint on here. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, we're in business. All right. Sweet. Oh, well, I guess even if it wouldn't have worked, I could have still made the points anyway. So, today we're going to be discussing basically, yeah, like I said, backgrounds and values. So let's get started. First thing I want to talk about is Tryndamere, right? I'm sure for those of you who play League of Legends, you've seen this drawing before, right? But I want to talk to you about my thought process going into this and kind of the major ideas that were going through my head and all the time when I'm creating splash art for Riot. So the first thing I want to point out is the silhouette of the character and how well it is coming through in the values, right? Like one of the most important things I feel like in the League of Legends style, and actually I'm probably going to carry this over to my own work as well, is just the clarity of the forms, right? Clarity of forms in the places where you want the reader, thinking comics, the viewer to be looking, right? So areas of high contrast such as here, right? This is a huge area of contrast because you got this white right here, and then you got these darks right here. And there's no other part in the picture that has that stark of a contrast. So by default, you are Jedi mind tricking your viewer into saying, look here, right? Into saying to his friends that are looking at the computer, look here, right? And you, people think that they have control over where they're looking at in the page, but they really don't. Well, at least the initial look. People like they'll go over here and look at it and be like, "Oh wow, look at all this gold! Oh wow, look at his sword; it's so shiny! Wow! Oh, look at those muscles; those are totally anatomically incorrect. It should be more like this, not like that." But anyway, that's just nitpicking for people that And actually no musculature. I've learned more about the human anatomy since I've done this picture, and unfortunately it doesn't exactly do that. But whatever, it's all good. It's still got the point across. So again, you want to look at the silhouette of the character. Like, notice this happening all throughout here, right? This is one of the most important things that you want to be thinking about when you create this picture. And I'll show this again in the values, right? Because values are basically if you take away all the color from your drawing and turn it to black and white, are those values still clear, right? So you can have contrast with color, right? But what's really important is that your values are going to be the most telltale sign that you are creating a cohesive and clear to read image. So check this out. Once we put this layer on top of it, look at that. This is basically breaking it down into 3 colors, right? And usually people compose thumbnails this way. And this is where the navigator comes in really handy. Because if you look right here, up right at the top right corner, you'll notice that it basically takes this entire picture and it shrinks it down into a tiny little bite-sized piece. And you'll know that you're creating a good picture and a good composition if you look to the navigator and you can still tell what's going on. You can still see the form and you can still get a feel for what's happening in the picture, whether it's the action, whether it's the character, or whether it's the environment, right? So let me talk a little bit about the background of this one, and then we'll move on to the subsequent splashes that we have to look at. So you'll notice that there's things in the background that sort of point back at our character, and these are all conscious decisions that are made, right? Like you look at this gold piece, right? But look at this sword. It's pointing straight back up to his face, right? These are conscious decisions, right? And also, let's see, as you go back in space, this is from the very first environment episode. As you go back in space, you'll notice that the shadows get much lighter. And this is the best way to simulate depth by basically putting atmosphere in front of the things that are going back in space. Like you'll notice these shadows, you know, are on this little column here, right? But then this shadow is on the same type of column and same type of material. But this column is much closer to us. And then same thing here. Look at the shadow on the sword here. Look at how dark that is, right? And then as you go back, like there's also bloom happening here, right? Bloom is basically what happens when the light kind of spills around. It's like a camera effect, but it's basically the light is kind of like spilling around the atmosphere that's in the air, and it's kind of making like a glow around whatever object is in front of it, right? And it's a really cool kind of final effect that I like to put on my work. Same here. I even put a little bit of glow like right on the sword here. See that little bit of yellow right there? It's coming off the sword. That's also bloom. And that's kind of like one of the final things that I do. Oh yeah, and not to mention all the bloom that's happening here. This is also subsurface scattering in here. The fur, basically it picks up the light and then it refracts inside of the little fur hair particle things, and it actually makes them appear like they're glowing. So that's another thing. As far as the background for this, because I want to do my best to try to focus on backgrounds as much as possible, there's another picture that will help illustrate quite a bit of that. But as far as this, what I did is backgrounds, I'd say the best thing you want to do is find a reference for what you're looking for, right? Like if you want to do like some inside of some cathedral thing, just Google a few images of like cathedral or, you know, Gothic architecture, right? And then you'll be able to look at the shape language, and you can see like there's reoccurring shape languages in here, like these columns here. They kind of have this thing going on, right? Same thing back here, but that right there. See? These are just reoccurring little like kind of pointy edges, and this kind of helps reinforce, you know, whatever type of architecture I was going with, and allow it to kind of just inspire you. Don't feel the need to copy it outright exactly, but definitely use it to inspire you. Architecture is not an easy thing for me, and that is why I always like using references. It makes it a lot easier, and you can honestly cheat a lot of it, right? You actually don't need to draw a lot of structures. Like, look at this. Look how much architecture and detail I actually put into this background besides the coins. Like, the biggest thing that I had to worry about was what this chair was going to look like. I basically just had to design what this chair was going to look like, right? And even this I had a little bit of a reference for. You know, it's just like this is the cushion, this thing here. I had to make it look like you could actually sit in it, right? And it would be like a big kind of king's throne type thing. So this is basically the only thing I had to design, right? The background is basically column, 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 this thingy, and then those repeating shapes, right? And then once you get back here, you'll notice that all I'm doing is I'm not really detailing all of these little stones, right? All these little stones and workings are not really detailed. They're just shapes. They're just shapes that represent what they are. And you allow the viewer's mind to basically fill in the gaps. And once it's far back enough, it actually adds depth to your picture, because as you decrease detail as things go into space, it basically helps reinforce that it is further back there. And you can just see even back here, look these shapes. I don't even know what these are. Sometimes you can just throw in random little brush strokes and they'll suggest things, you know. And once you get back that far, you can just kind of start doodling in whatever looks nice. Like even back here, there's just kind of like little filler material just to add in the spaces. You know, I don't want to use the term filler because it's not like I'm just like throwing it in there for no reason, but it's like it's breaking up the space, you know. And if I was a little more calculating about it, I could make it into more columns or maybe another smaller structure back there. But once you get back that far, you're using such little contrast. Like look at the difference between this color here and this color here. You know, it's very, very minute difference. So keep that in mind. The general rule of thumb is use shapes in your backgrounds. Don't be afraid to like condense shadows. And kind of like this. See how I've just kind of like blended this shadow into this one? Don't feel like you have to draw all that detail in there. Like that's one thing that I really, that's what scares me initially about doing backgrounds. But once you realize how much you can get away with by like condensing and simplifying forms, backgrounds actually become quite fun, and they add a lot to your picture and can complement your character and make it a finished piece. So, wow, that was a mouthful. I'm glad we were able to draw all over this picture. That's awesome. So let's move on to the next one, shall we? Let's move on to Sehuani, and let's basically talk about those same things, specifically with the background. And yeah, we'll just kind of outline basically what I'm talking about. So you got this big old like tundra landscape, snowy mountains, you got rocks, and you're like, well, how am I going to paint all of this, right? Easy. You just start condensing forms and simplifying shapes. Here, I'll move myself over here for this one, right? And yeah, there, let's just try it out, right? So you'll notice that the most detail that I put into anything is literally right here in the foreground. Look, you can see like this shape here, and then you got all these little details in here, right? These are just like little brush strokes. It's just kind of like adding noise, and noise is good for certain points in your painting. Like look at all this. Look how much texture and just like noise and dots I put in here. And this is really nice, and you know, it can be refined a little bit more. Like nowadays I would probably refine this and make it look a little bit more like believable snow. But it's nice to do this in your foreground. That way it helps reinforce that as you push the detail back. Like look at the stark contrast between this and then the trees back here. Look at that, you know, like this guy. Look how simple that tree is. It's literally just a shape and then a little thing on the side to show where the light's coming from, you know. And then as I get back here, it's just taking a low contrast color, like I'm looking at this, and then I'll probably eyedrop that color, and I'll probably turn it a little bit more darker and maybe bluer, and then all I'll do is I'll just go in here and then I'll eyedrop that, push a little lighter, and go back like that. And see, I'm basically creating layers of depth here, right? And it's all told by how dark the shadows are, right? And I tend to knock back the lights a little bit too, like strategically, but for the most part, I'm knocking back shadows. Jeez, I'm having a hard time talking today. I wish I had a glass of water. That would be nice. Oh, you know what? I do have a bottle of water. Let me get that. I feel like my throat is getting a little dry. It's a little bit dry. Like my pants. Like my pants are hanging up. Oh, okay. But you know, one thing I really did like about last week's daily was that I kind of just disregarded the time restraints, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make this a good show no matter what. So here's hoping that this one renders out properly, and yeah, it seems like nobody had a problem with the show being a little bit longer, so maybe it'll be a little longer today. I think that would be cool. So you'll notice, okay, so look at this. Because of the shadows, right, we're communicating what layers these are. This is layer 1, right, because darkest shadows, and it's just kind of, you can see it anyway. And this is 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, right? This is the big old mountain back here, right? And then once you get back to this point, right, you're just working with lower contrast colors. And you can, I'm not sure exactly how this works, but sometimes you can kind of cheat things, right? Like notice how the shadows up here, they start to get darker, but they don't feel necessarily like, you know, they're closer than these trees, right? In fact, I mean, the reason why the trees are lighter here is because of this mist. There's actually like a shape of like a cloud or a misty cloud in there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that will affect your shadows, and it's not always going to be 100%, you know, like a 1, 2, 3 read. But the point is that you want to make sure that oftentimes it's just clear. Like that's the easiest way for you to communicate depth and when you're using color and value. And yeah, mostly like I'm painting this mountain, right? But again, look at how I'm doing this. Is I've got basically like blue. It's basically like the color of the sky. Look at that. It's the color of the sky right here, right? All I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, there's light interacting with something here, right? Basically, the sky is your atmosphere, right? So as things go back, oh yeah, I forgot to say this. I said this in the old environment study daily, where whatever color the sky is that's usually what color the atmosphere is going to go back. Like say if it's a purple sky, then things are going to start to turn more purple as they go into the distance. If it's a blue sky, it's going to go more blue. So this is so far back in the background that so much atmosphere is covering the shadows of this mountain that the shadows are literally just blue. They're the same color as the sky. But the way you show that it's an object in space, time and space, is you show that there's light interacting with it here, right? And again, look at how simple these shapes are. But then I'm going in and I'm kind of like cutting out like little things in there, right? I'm just taking the brush and kind of like flicking it right in there, right? I'm creating these little shapes with little noises in there to kind of create like it's noise, but it's also, what's the word? It's to simulate trees, obviously. But since they're so small, again, it's scale, right? Because you got tree here, tree there, getting smaller, smaller. So by the time they're back here, and they're literally just like little flicks like that, they're like, whoa, okay, those trees are really small. So that mountain's like way back there. So again, oh, that's the other thing that you can help to push things back in space is scale, right? And rocks are kind of hard to scale off of, but trees are really easy. Leaves also. Like if you have a giant character, this was the case in Rune Golem Skarner's case. We wanted to make him look big, but all there were trees around him and a temple, right? But you know, you don't know how big those are normally in real life. So an idea that we came up with was to draw leaves on the ground, right? Because we all know kind of the basic size of leaves, and if we make them really, really small, then it'll help to make him look bigger. So yeah, again, that splash is not the best work of mine, but you get the idea. And again, look at how this shape overlaps this one. This is on basically the same plane as this. And these are back here, right? Just because of how dark the shadows are. All right, so I'm moving myself over, and we are moving on to the next one. Oh, right before I take off, let me just show you, or right before Sehwani takes off, let me show you the values. So again, look, this is an example of when the values probably could have been a little bit clearer, right? This is basically me placing the same filter that I put on Tryndamere on Sehwani. So you'll notice that, Or did I hope that I showed this on Trindomir. Oh yeah, I showed this. Okay, so you can see on Trindomir how the important part of his silhouette being his chest, arms, and head, those are all coming through very clearly, right? But once you get down to the legs, they kind of blend into the background, right? And that's okay because his legs are not the focus, right? That's okay for those to become darker and start to blend in value-wise with the background. But in Sejuani's case, unfortunately, what happens here is because of the color or because of the value choices, the pig is kind of getting lost in here. We can't tell exactly where the pig's body ends, right? We can see a big thing in here. We can tell there's a head there, but we can't see the rest of the body. That's probably something I probably could have done better. And also, like with Sejuani, you'll notice that her overall shape is kind of blending in a little bit, like especially with the chain and her arm. All of these things are blending in with the background elements. So it probably could have been a little bit clearer. But, I mean, when you look at it this way, I'd say it's still pretty clear. But yeah, I can see with the pig, like here and here, it might be a little unclear, like when I'm squinting. The squint tests reveal all. Moving on. Let's go to Ari. Okay, so check this one out. I really like this one because this is an example of rendering architecture without having to put a lot of detail into it, right? So I wanted this little pagoda thing behind it, right? But notice what I've actually done here. It's almost like I cheated the system. All I've done is basically rendered the outside shape with some reference. I think this is actually a photo that I just kind of dropped in there and photo bashed it, as some people call it. But I basically just kind of traced the outline. You can do that in digital. You don't have to be afraid about like tracing and heavily referencing stuff, as long as you're not blatantly stealing something that's copyrighted. Because in the industry, I'm telling you, it's all about time. Time is money, my friend. So people want a certain quality and they want it as fast as possible. So anything you can do to work that to your advantage is always going to be good for you as an artist. So you might as well just get over that now if you feel dirty or you feel like you're not pure anymore because you've referenced or taken a photo. So anyway, look at this. All I've done is I've created the silhouette of this pagoda, right? And then to create the depth in it, all I'm doing is I'm just strategically placing these shadow elements, right? These shadow shapes. And then adding in a little bit of noise, right, in here. See that? Adding in just a little bit of noise to show that there is detail to the structure, right? And little lines just to show where the light is interacting. But again, look, this is kind of like the mountain, right? Look at the atmosphere. We've got like this yellowish green, right? And look at how it's affecting this, right? The shadows are like a green. The color of the pagoda, it could be a white pagoda. It could be black. It could be any color at this point. But because we've chosen to obscure it so heavily with the atmosphere, it's becoming much more of a compositional shape, right? But you still look at this drawing and you're like, oh, okay, your mind believes it. Your mind sees that and you're like, oh, okay, I know where she is. That structure is believable. And it's almost like you allow the viewer to feel it. You allow the viewer to fill in the gaps. And that, my friends, is where you become Jedi master artists. When you allow your viewers to do a lot of the work for you. And you show them basically what they want to see, and then the stuff that isn't as important, you just let them fill it in. You just give them the tools to work with, and they fill in the rest. And let's zoom in here. As you can see some of the remnants of the photo right in there, right? Like look at the little like fragments of like detail that used to be in there. Very, very low contrast. I don't even know if you can see that, but yeah, definitely not from here. So that's another example of using background elements as shapes. Again, and look at these leaves, right? Oh, I hate drawing leaves. I hate drawing trees, right? Nobody likes to draw leaves and branches and millions of freaking leaves everywhere. So you know what I do? I just make it layers of shapes, right? So it's like these leaves are all bunched together. And they're going to make this shape, right? And this whole shape down to here is layer 1. You go back one, and then you'll notice, again, these shapes are becoming brighter because they're going into the atmosphere. It's layer 2. Layer 3 is back here. And then way back here, there's very, very small shapes in here. Very, very low contrast with the background. And that is layer 4. Right, so we've created all this depth going back into space because of the shapes that we've used. And we didn't have to draw all of those leaves. So that is very nice and always a welcome addition to any of my paintings because I do not like drawing trees or leaves. I like the way they make paintings look, but I don't enjoy drawing them. So, moving on. Let's just check out the values on this. See, look how clear this is, right? We can see clearly the silhouette of Ari in there, right? Most important parts, her head, her chest, arms, and torso. Then as you get down to the legs, it becomes less contrast because this is not the focal point. We don't want people looking here. We want people looking here. So that is a conscious decision made on our part. Moving on to Fizz. Oh, this one's going to be a fun one. Okay. So again, let's quickly go through it. Foreground elements, we got this rock, right, and the water. You'll notice how much detail is put into this rock. I mean, it's still fairly loose. You can still see some brush strokes in there, but there's noise, right? There's a lot of noise going on through here, like splash effects. Got the shark, all that stuff. But then, as you go into the background, you'll see you got this right here. You got these ships. This is supposed to be sort of like a bilgewater-y looking place. You'll see right up through here. And then as you go back to right here, the cannons, you'll see it just becomes obscured by the atmosphere to the point of just being shapes. And we like that. This is actually a very, very simple background. I'm really happy with this one too. Let me move this out of the way. Put myself right here for a second. Again, look, I'm not drawing this dock. I'm not drawing all of the wood and like even how it like connects, right? All I'm drawing is just the shapes. And letting my viewer, why do I keep saying that? Fill in the gaps. Let's check out the values on this sucker. Woo! Look at that. See? His legs. His legs are blending in with the rock values. And then the high contrast points are right around here. We can clearly see the silhouette of his head and his source of power, which is his awesome trident that smacks you and does percentage damage. How about that? Moving on to the lovely Riven. We got 3 more. All right, yeah, that's fine. Fine with that. I don't know how long this is going. I don't know how long we've been going. Feels like 20 minutes, but we're going to keep going. You know why? Because you guys are awesome, and I really want to help explain this to you and how simple doing backgrounds really can be. So, I went over this in the Maokai painting episode, and this was basically having elements of your background that reinforce the perspective that you are looking at the character in, right? So as we look here, we've noticed that the camera angle is pitched low, right? We're looking up at Riven, which makes her look more heroic and awesome looking. And to help reinforce that, I've included lines in the composition and the background elements that are also going up into space, right? This is helping to reinforce where the perspective is going, and that is that it is going up, right? And also on top of that, we're reinforcing her silhouette, right? Clear silhouette. And then the background elements, which is like this pillar, all I'm doing is going in here and creating these shapes, right? Creating these shadow shapes. And notice how the contrast, you'll be surprised how small of a color change can suggest like information of like anything basically. Like if you're drawing rock, basically like look at how small of a color change there is like here, like between this shape and here. Between these two colors right here, barely any change. But there's so much information that's being conveyed here, right? And this goes further into like material rendering and how objects interact with light. That is a more advanced tutorial that I'd be happy to go into at a future date once I feel that I am knowledgeable enough to actually teach that, because right now I still feel like I'm learning and I am a noob with materials. But in general, like, there's a few things that I can help with, like the metal stuff like that, and I don't know. Like, I guess the thing I'm afraid of is, like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I just kind of like do it and just like kind of trust in your artist instinct with what looks good. But I'd like to kind of get it down to a science and figure it out. And then you'll notice as the background kind of goes this way, look how simple this gets. It's literally like, it's pretty loose at this point. It's very, very painterly. And I personally think this is kind of cool because it's just like, there's no real reason to look over here. You can put some cool stuff over there, like extra things, but all it is just extra, it's extra, what is it? Shapes and basically things that are reinforcing where she is, which is like this old ruined kind of dusty city. And again, look at how there's like a descending thing, right? There's descending like heights of things that are happening here. And lines, right? Look at these lines that are pointing back to our character. Now think about all these subliminal things that are happening, right? Moving on to the values. Bam! Look at that. See? Legs, again, blending into the background. And high contrast in your focal point area. Moving on to Ari. Moving on to Kumiho. Yeah. Alright. Oh, maybe that's why I'm mumbling a little bit today. I'm feeling a little bit of a lack of sleep as of late. And I've opened the garage door, so it's a little bit hotter in here. Oh, that is good. Moving on to Ari. Okay, so this is an example of a suggested background, right? There's actually nothing really happening back here but her tails. Her tails are basically the background. But this is going to be a very prime example of flow and using the background elements to complement your character and draw attention back to your focal point, right? And I was talking about this again in the Maokai painting daily. So we obviously know we want to be looking here, right? This is our character. This is our hottie Ari, and we want to be looking at her. So with the tails, we wanted them to be kind of spiraling around, looking cool, right? But notice how all these tails, they lead to a point of interest, right? They point you right back to her. Except for this one. This one kind of goes up here. But it can kind of S around. You want to think of the borders. People don't necessarily like go here and then they look off the screen. They'll hit the border and then they'll follow it, right? So they'll go up here, follow it up, and they'll be like, oh, hey, I'm going back down here. And then you're here, and then bam, right back to Ari's face, right? Or you can follow it, you know, back up this leg to her boob. That's supposed to be pointing at her face. But you know what I'm saying. And back here, like that. All these background elements all pointing back hither. So that's a big example of flow and using that to your advantage to complement and create drawing attention to your focal point. And again, this is a little bit of a tricky one. I feel like it's still pretty clear. Like if you look at our navigator up at the top left, you can still see Ari there, right? But I feel like maybe her leg, well, you know what? Her leg is blending in with the background, but you know, that's been a common thing that's been happening in all of ours. So now that I look at this a second time, I think that's okay. I mean, we can still see that there's a heavy contrast here, and we can see the face, we can see the hand. So I'd still say that this is a successful splash. Moving on to one of my favorites. This is Diana. Woo, look at this hot mama. Okay. So this is a good example of a lot of things, right? We're going to kind of pull everything together and talk about how we're using all of the prior knowledge requirements to go into this one. So first things first, let's talk about the background, right? I'll move myself over here now. Let's talk about the background. Okay, so you see you got like elements in here, right? But then what happens here? What? It's pointing you back. Look at that. This is becoming an arrow. This element is becoming an arrow. It's pointing you back to the focal point, which is Diana's lovely face, right? Look at these flowy things. Look at these, right? These curves. Look at these elements that are pointing you to interesting places that you should be looking, right? All these curves happening. Even this, look at that. Whoop! Right back up. Then, as we go to the background, look how much detail is in this fallen Solari symbol, right? Look at all the cracks and stuff in here, right? Actually, I shouldn't draw over them so you can actually see it. Look at all the detail in here, right? Noise and busy textures going on. But then, let's go to the background. Let's compare it to this iron Solari symbol in the back. Look at this. Look how simple it is, right? It's, again, it's heavy atmosphere with the light creating the form. Excuse me. And then as you get back here, this is actually a tough one because this is an example of where I actually had to knock back the light of the background because she's got this white hair, right? And I wanted the hair to be brighter than the moon that was lighting it. And that, my friends, is what you call cheating the image. You cheat the light and you create what you think is better in some cases to create a more powerful image. And I wanted the light on her hair to be brighter than the light of the moon. Even though it's being lit by the moon, and technically the moon should be brighter, right? So I did that. I knocked back the color of this. I mean, look, let's eyedrop that. You might think it's white, but it's kind of gray. Woo! All right. And then you can see here, I'm clearly not used to talking this much. I think I need to do more of these. That, and I think it's getting drier. I don't know what it is, but like whenever the season changes and it gets drier, like my nose starts bleeding in the morning and it's like really like nasty and annoying. And I can always tell when that time of the year is coming around. So, again, look at these. Look how simple these shapes are. Very, very simple shapes. Not drawing in all this detail and architecture. All the murals of Leona fighting the moon goddess or whatever, or the sun goddess, not Leona, fighting the moon goddess. And yeah, you just see how simple all of the things are and how suggestive things get once they go to the background. You just have to have that general idea of what you want. And again, this is a semi-low pitched camera angle. Look at the lines that are discerned throughout this picture, pointing us upward. All of these lines are pointing upward towards this area, right? Helping us to feel like we are looking up at the lovely Diana. And to finish it all off, check out them values. See that? Oh, the legs are clear in this one. Maybe it's because Diana has sexy legs and we wanted to make sure that people saw those. Yeah. And you got that. See, look at the moon. Look at how the moon is knocked back so that way it doesn't overpower the shape of this hair, right? I wanted this to be more powerful than the moon behind it. And it worked! So how about that? Right? And then I put a very, very big area of contrast right there, the moon emblem on her head to draw your attention there. Moving on to the final piece. We'll be talking about Emma. This is an old drawing that I did, and I really liked it. And I was actually pleasantly surprised when I put the same filters that I put onto the Riot Splash Arts onto this one. Because this was done before I was working at Riot. And I was already... I was already demonstrating that I had the skills necessary to get the job. So let's go through it, shall we? Let us talk about values first, right? Let's talk about values. This is what happens when I put that same filter onto the Emma piece, right? Bam! Look at that. So this is very, very interesting, right? Because areas of focus are coming out to us. They are calling out to us. They are calling our name, right? You got the knee here, and these legs here. This area of her dress doesn't pop out. It blends with the background, but I'm okay with that because I feel like the most interesting point is here, right? And look at this. You got all this darkness and gray, and then you got these big white eyes, right? So we are going to be looking there. And then look at how the areas go back, right? You got layer 1, and you got layer 2 back here, layer 3, and layer 4, right? And these are all the levels of depth that are being created and teleported in. No, what is it? Telegraphed. No. Translated into your mind. Man, I seriously need to get some more sleep. The feeling of depth is being teleported into your mind, and because of that, the piece is strong. Oh man. Okay, so going back. Let's look closely, right? Let's look closely at these photo textures that we laid in here. This is basically taking a photo and then setting it to overlay. And basically what it does is it texturizes whatever you want. I just took a picture of like a wash wall and then those cracks and just laid it in there, right? On overlay mode. And that gives us the cracks that we so desire. That sounds nasty. Oh man, I was full of giggles today, man. We better wrap this up. Let's see. But then, as we go back, look, it's like, I don't want to draw these buildings. I don't want to draw these buildings. You know what would be really easy? If I just turn these buildings into shapes. Look at how simple these shapes are. And because I'm kind of cutting into them and kind of making these jagged edges, they have the impression that they're old, dirty, run down, post-apocalyptic even, which is good. And then as you get to the very back, watch, okay, this is layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and then as you get to layer 4, look at how little the contrast is with this little church thing, whatever this is. And I'm just kind of throwing in details with like very, very subtle shades of a darker color, right? Even these little shops up here. Fairly simple. There's a lot of atmosphere interacting with it, which in this case is actually brown. Look at the atmosphere in this piece. It's not brown or purple. It's brown to help simulate like more of a like a deathly feel, like the life has gone from this planet, and that is awesome. So yes, the atmosphere is brown, and it's pushing the shadows lighter and browner as they go back in space. And then the sky is like this yellowish kind of brown thing, right? And yeah, I think that's about it. I think that is about it, yeah. So, with that, we will wrap up episode 50 of the KNKL Show. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I spent a little bit of time kind of preparing it and getting it ready for you guys. Well, quite a bit of time. A little bit of time. I was thinking about it all week. And then I spent quite a bit of time just thinking about what pictures would be good to show. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that this explains a little bit more of my thought process that goes into creating my backgrounds. And yeah, I hope that I am able to pass this knowledge on to you, and it will help you with creating your awesome masterpieces. Please submit anything that you use with this tutorial. I mean, anything that you create using this tutorial to the Facebook. I want to see your awesome backgrounds and cool compositions, flowy compositions. I want to see you guys controlling my mind to look where you want me to look now that you know the secret. So with that, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. I'm Kienan Lafferty, and I will see you guys next week.